Back to the Future is one of the most beloved blockbusters of the 1980s, and thus far, it's one of the few classic franchises that hasn't been revived or rebooted. Robert Zemeckis, the director himself, has even chimed in to declare it will never be remade so long as he is alive. But honestly, I think Back to the Future is a perfect example of a film that should be remade, and I'm going to try and convince you of that. So let's talk about it. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Sean Chandler, and I started this channel essentially because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down in the comments section. Tell me, should Back to the Future be remade? Why or why not? Let's have a nice, lively, yet respectful conversation about this movie that we all love. Finally, this video was suggested by my Inner Circle community over on Patreon. In the Inner Circle, you get weekly exclusive Q&As, a weekly video discussing every movie that I saw in the previous week, and more access to me. To find out if you want to join the Inner Circle, check out the link down below to my Patreon page down in the description. With that said, let's get started. When I say that Back to the Future is perfect for a remake, what I don't mean is that they retell the exact same script and have 1985 Marty McFly go back to 1955. Also, what I don't mean is just taking that concept and doing a beat for beat, scene for scene remake, except setting it in the present. I think there's two criteria for when a movie is prime for being remade. The first is if technology has changed enough and updated enough that we can now capture the vision of the original story better. Now, I don't think that Back to the Future falls into this category, as I think the special effects in the original film hold up very well. The second criteria is, has culture shifted enough that this story would have new meaning and possibilities if retold now? And that is where I think that Back to the Future is just prime to be revisited every 15 or 20 years. Because we live in a time where culture and technology change at such a rapid pace, the idea of a modern day high schooler going back in time and meeting their parents in high school is a concept that can be refreshed and retold quite often, and it's new, different, and there's all kinds of possibilities that weren't there before. A 1980s Reagan-era high schooler going back to the 1950s, right after World War II, right before the Civil Rights Movement, is interesting and unique in ways that would be very different from a modern-day Trump-era, post-9/11 kid raised in the cell phone, smartphone, high-speed internet, Netflix era going back to the year 1990. All of the pop culture references, all of the fish out of water elements.
What do you mean you've seen this? It's brand new.
Yeah, well, I saw it on a rerun.
It's a rerun.
Are suddenly transformed into something new because culture has shifted enough. You keep the same basic story structure and overview, but you transform all of the specifics because it's in the 90s, not the 1950s. So you still have Doc and Marty meet up to test the time machine. Marty accidentally gets sent to the past without any fuel to get back to the present. He still accidentally causes his parents to not meet up, and he has to find a way to get back to the future while getting his parents to meet each other and fall in love. Same basic structure, but all the details can be different. So is there a clock tower? Maybe, maybe not. Does Marty McFly invent Smells Like Teen Spirit? Probably not. But maybe. There's a bunch of fun things you can do with this. In the present day, Marty's mom could be very politically correct, but you go back to 1990s, her in high school, and she's very politically incorrect. You can have Marty take a picture and he has to wait to have it developed, and he's never had to do that before. He has to look something up in an encyclopedia rather than just getting on his phone. Maybe something inside of the plot of the movie reminds him of an episode of The Twilight Zone that he just wants to watch because he's always been able to just turn on to Netflix and find it, but he discovers back in 1990, it was difficult to watch a random episode of a TV show. In the present, you can have the mom as a heavy critic of Donald Trump, and then you have her back in the past watching that interview he did in the late 80s where he said he might run for president and think that's a good idea. There's just a bunch of these little pop culture type references about the change in society and culture that make for new setups that weren't there before. So who would I have directed? Lloyd and Miller. Over the last decade, they've clearly indicated that they have their finger on the pulse of the pop culture. They watch these things, they understand Lego Lego's Spider-Man from the perspective of the audience. They've also made it very clear that they have a distinct sense of humor and voice in their direction and their writing as well. So even if this one comes out and you hate it, it's very different from the original one. Would it be as good as the original? Who knows? Probably not. But I think the more important question is, would it be its own thing? If Lord and Miller directed it, it would be its own distinct telling of this type of story in a different time frame. So even if you hated it, you still have the original. It's not tarnished in any way by the existence of this Lord and Miller other version of this story. As for the cast and the characters, you wouldn't want to try and recapture the lightning in a bottle that was Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Crispin Glover, and the rest of them. No, you'd try and make the right characters for this version of the film. You'd have versions of these characters, but it's not trying to cast the new Michael J. Fox. It's not trying to capture Crispin Glover with a different actor. No, it's a different characterization that could be very different or could be very similar, but it depends on what fits the film. So I don't have any guesses as to who I would cast because I wouldn't be trying to just one for one replace the people that were there. I would want it to be its own thing. The thought isn't who's the modern day Christopher Lloyd. No. The thought is who fits this movie the best and what group of people have the best, most interesting chemistry with one another. Honestly, I just want a movie about a modern day high schooler going back to 1990 and all of the fun shenanigans that can come with all of that. If it's awful, we still have the original. So what did you think about my pitch? Tell me down below in the comment section. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Am I off my rocker? If you enjoyed this video, consider clicking that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching and keep talking movies too much.